Okay, Casey Murdock. I'm running for the Senate seat, District 27. I'm from Felt, Oklahoma. I run a cow-calf operation there. Kind of some of my experience before this race, I was on the Felt School Board for 10 years. I'm a current state representative for District 61. I've been in office for 3 years, so I'm, still kind of learning what's going on, but I'm picking it up. Okay, so DOC, lots of problems. We've got overcrowding, lots of turnover. That's a tough job for anyone to walk in and be a guard or an employee at DOC, and we need to increase their salary. I think if we're paying them for what they're worth and what they're doing, I think that would fix the turnover rate, because they have a tough job. It's a dangerous job. It's they're basically babysitting adults and not nice people that's in those facilities. The overcrowding, in my opinion, I believe there's consequences for your actions, and if you are a danger, you need to be locked away. We have, as a state representative, I feel I have a responsibility to protect the public, but the overcrowding with the drug offenses, I think we need to increase mental health, and especially in Northwest Oklahoma, we need more mental health programs. And Northwest Oklahoma all the way out into the Panhandle. I had a really, really good friend of mine call me this summer, and his son was messed up on meth. And he had come home. He's 22 years old. He had come home, and he was wanting help. He was coming down off of it, and he was wanting help. And if you know anything about it, you have a very, very short window in there that they ask for help. And this friend of mine was wanting to find someplace, and he called me, and I started making phone calls, and I was disappointed. I was shocked and disappointed. The closest bed that I could find for him was in Enid, and from where I live, that's 4 hours away. They wound up taking him to Amarillo, Texas, to a place. He's doing a lot better now, but we need more mental health places in Northwest Oklahoma and on out into the Panhandle, because the meth problem is getting horrible in Northwest Oklahoma, and that is something that we need to address. And I think once we address mental health, I think that will help with the overcrowding. So, I graduated from Panhandle State University. I have a ag business degree. Panhandle is really close to my heart. Being at the state capitol, I'll go to different members' offices, and they have an OU flag or an OSU flag hanging in their office. Well, I contacted the president of Panhandle State, and I said, I want a Panhandle State flag to hang in my office. And people ask who I root for. I said, I root for Panhandle State. So these regional universities are important. The kids in rural Oklahoma, they go to small schools, and I think it helps them adjust from a small school. They can start out at a regional university, but I think your dropout rate at these bigger universities, you have a kid that graduates from Freedom with a class of 8 or 10 or 3. And they walk into a freshman class at Stillwater, and there's 300 or 400 in a class. It's kind of overwhelming. And these regional universities serve a purpose. And they can, whether a kid wants to go to Northwestern and finish there, that's great. But if he wants to go on, it kind of helps him transition into a larger classroom. But these cuts that's happened since I've been there 3 years, we've cut. I think the last 2 years, I was visiting with the president of Panhandle State, and they've had 27% cuts. Northwestern, I think this last year was 17. We cannot continue cutting. And the 3 years that I've been there, I feel, and not just higher ed, but agencies, we have cut to the bone, and we cannot continue doing the cuts. So last week, the governor came out with her executive orders. Worries me. Consolidating the administrations on higher ed. I think we might have a constitutional issue there. I don't know if she has the authority to do that. But I'll wait for it and let the state regents and the Supreme Court decide on that. But I just don't think that she has the ability to do that, because higher ed is constitutional. That's the one that really concerns me. So being on the school board at Felt, and Felt's a small, tiny school. I think right now K through 12, their population is, or their enrollment is 105. It worries me, because I think consolidating administrations, the next step is consolidating the school. And in rural Oklahoma, in these smaller communities, that school is the community. And when you close a school down and consolidate it, you lose the community. And I do not want to see that happen. I graduated from Felt in 1988, and when I started kindergarten, the threat was there that Felt might close down. Families took in foreign exchange students. They did everything they could do to help keep that school open. And so my entire high school and grade school experience was always under the threat of the school may close down. And that's one thing I fight so hard at the Capitol for, is to make sure our rural schools are funded. Being on the school board, at Felt, I understood kind of how it works. And one thing that concerns me about consolidating administrations, and let's say we don't wind up consolidating schools, but this in these small rural schools, that superintendent knows every kid. They know their faces, they know their parents, they know what those kids are going through. And what concerns me is whenever you have a county superintendent and he doesn't know the kids, and the concern is, are we turning these kids from faces to a number on a report? And I think once we do that, we've lost the battle in education. So my vote this in special session, and I've been accused of voting for the highest tax rate in tax raise in Oklahoma. So what that was a tax on cigarettes and a tax on Low Point beer. If I have to make a choice between taxing cigarettes or my rural hospitals closing, I'm going to tax the cigarettes. That's a no-brainer. In the 3 years that I have been a state rep, every year my hospitals have been calling me and say, we're barely making it. We can't make payroll at the end of the month, or it's hard finding doctors to come out here. We have to keep our rural hospitals. One thing that concerns me, if you lose the hospital, you lose the nursing home. You lose investment in your community. A company is not going to come in to a town or a community if they don't have a hospital. And so if you lose the hospital, it's devastating to the community, because you will not have investment, you will not have people moving in, and rural Oklahoma will dry up and die if we do not have our hospitals. And not to mention, it's at the Capitol, a lot of times it's not Democrat versus Republican, it's urban versus rural. And I have invited the urban legislators to come out and just drive through northwest Oklahoma and see what they're dealing with. I've actually told one, I said, you guys go skiing all the time and you drive right through here. What happens if you have a car wreck? You would want that hospital close, nearby, and functional. So we're down to funding, and Does money solve all the problems? Well, it will. I don't know if it solves all the problems, but it would help. So this past year, I ran a forensic audit bill, or performance audit bill. And what this bill would do would it would audit the top 20 agencies in the state. And I modeled this bill after Ohio and what they were doing in Ohio. And Ohio's had a lot of success with their audits. They have found about $200 million in savings by doing these audits. Now, Ohio's budget is 3 times what our budget is in Oklahoma. So if you percentage that out, Oklahoma probably somewhere between $70 to $100 million worth of savings on a performance audits, and that is, do we have programs that overlap? Do we, just efficiencies? This past year, our hole in the budget was $868 million. Even if we had this audit bill up and this audit legislation up and running, you're looking at $70 to $100 million. It's not the silver bullet. And I bring this up because during special session, we had a lot of rhetoric that we need to do audits. We need to do audits. And I agree. We as a public servant, we need to be spending your tax dollars as efficiently as we can. But it's not the silver bullet. Funding, we need to look at several options. It's a jigsaw puzzle, and we've got to put all the pieces together. There's not a silver bullet out there. Another deal I voted on was raising gross production tax to 4%. Had a lot of people unhappy at the Capitol, and while I'm at the Capitol, you hear all kinds of stories. You hear all kinds of testimonies. And what you have to do is you have to filter out everything you hear to kind of find the truth. Last year we ran the long lateral bill, and we got that passed, but it just barely passed. At that time, there were a lot of oil companies that offered going to 4% if we could get this passed. And we got it passed without going to 4%. That was last session, which was in May. In special session, we had 4% on the board, and they said, well, if you raise it to 4%, it's just going to kill us. I don't know what happened in the 5 months in between the regular session and special session, but it went from we're okay with 4% to 4% will kill us. So, I voted for that. Does raising GPT, is that the silver bullet? It's not. It's a piece of the puzzle. It will help, but we've got to look at several different options when we're talking about funding. One thing that I do not like, I do not like raising taxes to punish someone. And there was a lot of rhetoric at the Capitol of, oh, well, look, this group has lots of money, let's tax them. Or this group is, look at what they're worth on the New York Stock Exchange, so we need to tax them. I don't believe in punishing people for success, but we have to look at different options. Man, you hit the top 4. Maybe not a question, a comment. Like I've said, I ran 3 years ago, and in the campaign, when I first started it, you think you know the issues, and you're talking about ideas and where you stand on this and that. And I had a campaign last year. I had someone run against me after I was there 2 years, and same deal. And this year, in this Senate race, we have a lot of. I did a forum in Boise City, a debate, and it was, do you believe in the Constitution? Will you follow the Constitution? Yes. But when you get to the Capitol, you follow the Constitution, but with the basic fundamentals of how the state of Oklahoma works, I wish there were more questions on the logistics on what are you going to do. Your questions were perfect, because in my opinion, we have too many ideologues at the Capitol, and they get up and they go on and on and on about, well, I don't believe in this and this and this. And you can't have at the Capitol someone saying no, no, no on being an ideologue. We have to have more compromise. And that's a lot of the reason why we went into special session. There were enough ideologues that threw the wrench in the works and stopped everything up. We have to have more compromise and people working together. And I can tell you, I've been there 3 years, and no one at the state capitol gets everything they want. We have to be able to meet people in the middle and compromise.